Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm just going to start, and then as people arrive, they can come on in. If you haven't already sent your kids back, we have a nursery back there, just straight through these doors, and we'll have people watching your kids for the evening. But thank you so much for coming. I'm so glad it wasn't snowing. I was worried that would keep some people away, so praise God for the good weather. My name is Casey, and I'm the pastor's wife here at Canyon Road Church. My husband, Dan, and I have been here for 5 years. And I'm going to start off the night by speaking about internet safety. Then we're going to take a short intermission break to do the door prizes. So if you haven't put your name in the basket for a door prize yet, go ahead and do that. And then we'll have a little bathroom break. And then Jessica from Operation Underground Railroad will speak the second half of the evening. And Jessica is the Chief Aftercare Officer at Underground Railroad. And what many of you may not know is that Jessica and I grew up together in Omaha, Nebraska, in a church much like this. And we have some pictures of us up there together. That was a missions trip to London, England. We've been on missions trips together all over the world, and we served in our church together. We did outreaches in our local community, and I'm so grateful that God has brought us both back to Utah as adults, and I'm so honored that we get to minister together today. So thank you for coming, Jessica. We're so grateful that you could make it. I'll just tell you a little bit more about myself before I start. My husband and I have 4 kids, ages 14, 10, 7, and 3. We have served overseas as missionaries in different countries, and we have been pastors for 16 years. We are so happy that God called us here to Ogden, and actually I was born in Ogden, so it's great that after traveling the world, I could be back in my hometown once again. So my passion is I love to teach about the dangers of smartphones, pornography, social media, and screen addictions for kids and teens. I desire to give you as parents the tools and to educate you on ways to keep your kids safe online and ways to encourage your kids to make wise choices. I would like to start my message off by saying that the current epidemic of our day is not COVID. The true epidemic of our day is that kids and teens are developing life-altering mental health addictions and mental health issues. I'm going to start off with a Bible verse. Ephesians 6:12, should be on the screen, says, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." So we can see from this verse, and I want to tell you more, that the enemy wants to destroy your child. So first, the enemy wants your child to reject Christ, to develop addictions, and to live in misery and suffering until the day they die. Do you realize this? Do you realize that you have an enemy crouching at your door? If you are not fighting for your child's mental health, fighting for their relationship with Christ, then the enemy will gladly take the reins from you. Next verse is Ephesians 6:13. "Therefore put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything, to stand." I believe that each one of you, as a parent and a grandparent, are uniquely anointed by God to raise your child in this digital age. Instead of being afraid, I want to give you practical tools so that you feel prepared. I'm going to give you all some really sad statistics, but then I'm going to give you the good news. Don't you hate that? Bad news first, good news last. Some mental health disorders can be traced to genetics, abuse, traumatic brain injury, or toxins in the environment. But research indicates that when all these factors are considered, heavy use of fast-paced digital media, video games, and pornography more than doubles a child's risk of mental health issues. The U.S. Surgeon General reports that online interactions do not satisfy core needs for connection and can leave young people feeling hopeless. And I don't know if you guys saw on the news, but on January 30th of this year, 2023, the U.S. Surgeon General said 13 is too young to be using social media. Observational studies show that amongst adolescent girls, spending more than 2 hours a day on smartphones is linked to suicide and depressive symptoms. In 2020, 43% of children admitted to the ER for suicidal ideation or attempts were under 11 years old. Did you know that kids can buy drugs on social media? Drug dealers advertise on apps like Snapchat or TikTok or Instagram using posts and stories with code words and emojis. Direct message is then used to discuss privately. Then, a secure messaging app is used for further discussion on apps like WhatsApp. Then payment is used on apps like Venmo and Cash App. The drugs are shipped in the mail and can arrive in disguised packaging. We used to think that drug deals just went down on the street corner or in the school locker room, but technology has changed the ease with which minors can purchase these illicit substances. Our nation is currently experiencing an overdose epidemic. A child may think that they are ordering prescription opioids, when in reality, these counterfeit pills are a combination of lethal doses of fentanyl with other medications. According to a study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, the overdose mortality rate amongst U.S. adolescents 14 to 18 years rose by 94% from 2019 to 2020. More kids than ever are struggling to socialize, communicate, and cope effectively in the real world because they're not living in the real world. Giving kids smartphones too early is creating a host of mental and emotional disorders. Suicide is at a 50-year peak. 1 in 5 girls have experienced major depression. If parents would delay the age that they give their daughters social media, we would see a very different statistic. Did you know that 74% of teens were involved in a self-harm incident in 2021? Kids with smartphones tend to struggle more with attention span. The cheating rates increase in schools amongst kids who have a smartphone in class. And social media challenges tend to take place in schools and can be dangerous and illegal. 82% of online sex crimes against minors started by perpetrators using social media to contact the victims. Hardcore, violent porn is accessible anywhere, destroying the lives of children. Porn access is destroying these children's lives right under our noses. Did you know that apps like TikTok have a sex problem? One high school boy said that TikTok was the gateway to porn for him. Not to mention all the pro-Ana accounts on TikTok, which mean promote anorexia to young girls. What parents may not realize is that TikTok is like a Disneyland for pedophiles. Did you know content uploaded to TikTok by minors can also be uploaded to Pornhub? What kind of sexual dances are your kids doing for strangers on the internet? One boy said, "I'm 11 years old, but I think TikTok is a bad idea for anyone under 17 years old. It makes you feel uncomfortable and gives you sexual thoughts. Parents, do not let your kids get it. Just avoid it." Did you know that Snapchat was a platform created to exchange nudes? Literally, the guy who created Snapchat said, "I wish that when I sent this girl a text, that it would just disappear." Because of the ability of Snapchat photos to disappear within 10 seconds, it has become the major sexting vehicle. As one writer put it, for millennials, Snapchat is synonymous with sexting. Snapchat is also full of people wanting to sex traffic your children. Step number 1 is to desensitize them to sex trafficking. Drug dealers often give lower prices to young females seeking drugs for sex. This is sex trafficking, and it begins with 7th and 8th grade girls here in America. They are trading sex for drugs. They are trading it for cell phones, alcohol, car rides, and much more. But this is not limited to low-income families, as the social media grooming process is not limited to income or racial boundaries when it comes to sexualizing your children. There are many ways that sex trafficking is being promoted in most towns, in every place where Wi-Fi is available. It has effect on countless families who have no idea their kids are being groomed right under their noses. And kids who get sucked into this will have countless long-term issues in their lives unless they receive intervention. And TikTok might be the granddaddy of grooming young girls to be sex trafficked. Young girls are being offered money from strangers to send nude pictures and videos. Did you know that the popular children's game Roblox has a sex problem? Roblox sex games are commonly referred to condos. These are places generated by users where you can talk about sex. Their virtual avatars are having virtual sex. In these games, Roblox rules are thrown out the window. 8-year-olds are being asked to have sex on Roblox. The most vulnerable children are those in a family that is not vigilant and sufficiently educated about sexual abuse. When adults are naive, in denial, or not prepared to protect their children, abusers can operate without detection. Abusers exploit the politeness of adults. Adults that are uncomfortable expressing their concerns or establishing appropriate boundaries for their children can unintentionally enable the abuse. But did you know that there are safer alternatives for your kids than a smartphone? It's not too late if you already gave them a smartphone. You can switch out their smartphone for a safer alternative. The Gab phone, the Gab watch, the Pinwheel phone, the TrueMe phone, or just an old school Nokia phone. Parents often ask, well, what is the appropriate age to give my child a cell phone? And my answer, whenever you are ready for them to be exposed to pornography. So I suggest giving them one of the safer phones and wait to give them a smartphone till they're the age of 15 or 16. This goes for social media. I highly suggest you wait till they are also 15 or 16 to give them social media. Once you do give them a smartphone, I will tell you what to do. We put parental controls, use home internet filtering device, but have constant, and I mean constant conversations about the dangers of the internet. And check their phone regularly. You pay the cell phone bill, you're allowed to check their phones, parents. But in the end, your best fight against these dangers is an open and honest relationship with your child so that they will come to you with their mistakes and their questions. Questions about sex, porn, suicide, self-harm, eating disorders, dating, drugs, alcohol. Because if you don't teach them, the internet will. You might say to me, but Casey, my kids are going to miss out on so much stuff without a smartphone. My answer, yes, they may miss out on some things, and they may feel differently than their friends. But you will also be protecting them from being cyberbullied, being exposed to pornography, having their mental health destroyed by apps like Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok, being groomed by predators on social media, and having other kids ask them for nude photos. I've interviewed this generation of college students, and do you know what they told me? That their generation has been sabotaged by porn addictions, social anxiety, and depression. But today, we can make a difference in this upcoming generation. We may have dropped the ball in the past, but nothing is impossible with God. We can help these kids now to avoid those same pitfalls and horrors. You see, your kids will be my kids' generation. Your kids will be my kids, coworkers and friends, spouses. I care deeply about your kids. That's why we need to band together as parents now more than ever before and protect this next generation. Did you know World War III is already here? The target is your families, and the most vulnerable target is your children. The enemy is crouching at every door he can find, and we must do better, parents. I'm going to read a quote here from B. Screenstrong. It says, "Tethered to their smartphones 24/7, teens admit to loving their phones more than their friends. Teens now prefer to go in their room so that they can hang out on their phones in privacy. But are they really socializing, or are they just becoming more lonely and depressed?" You see, kids get emotionally attached to their phone. Did you know the average teenager spends 9 hours a day on their cell phone? What other things could they be doing with those 9 hours to better their mental health, their physical bodies, their friendships, their hobbies, and their relationship with God? Instead of dealing with their emotions and feelings head on, kids are just scrolling their phones to numb the pain, their feelings, which is robbing them of resiliency. That's a quote from Colin Karchner. This goes for all types of screen time, not just cell phones, video games, apps on tablets, and social media. They are all ways for your kids to just numb themselves and zone out. So we need to teach our kids how to process their feelings in a healthy way and give them other opportunities to connect. Going on adventures, getting ice cream together, playing at the park, work projects, reading books aloud as a family, playing board games, volunteering as a family, going to church. The possibilities are endless, but it requires you, as the adult, to get up off the couch and put your phone down and interact with your kids. One of the things I've researched is that kids, teens, and young adults are currently struggling from immense anxiety and stress in this post-pandemic world. So from 2020 on, their stress level has risen. What can you do to help your teen when they feel crippling emotions and are paralyzed from stress? If you give them the tools now, at a young age, to deal with their stress in a healthy way, it may keep them from turning to harmful addictions. Sorry, I'm not used to this mic, so I'm just having some problems. It usually goes on my husband's ear, so I'm fitting it to my little ear. Experts say that handing a smartphone with social media and untethered access to these apps with no training and no guidance is like handing your children the keys to a car with no driver's ed. So how do we sit here in shock wondering why kids are crashing and burning every single day? I'm going to read another quote from Colin Karchner. "Smartphones and social media are opening up our immature children to a world that is far beyond their maturity to correctly process. We put a tiny machine in their pocket that, if given without adequate training, opens them up to a new life of incessant anxiety, inescapable taunting and bullying, and the soul-crushing pressures to be perfect and to get the likes. And we are now recognizing that this entire lab experiment was a huge, huge mistake. Teenagers are reporting higher levels of social pressure than ever before. Doctors are prescribing more mood stabilizers than ever before. When did all these trends start going into full gear? The data shows the spike started around 2010, the year smartphones and social media became the new norm for our lives. Nationwide, we see an epidemic spike in the number and frequency of tweens and teens being diagnosed with severe anxiety and depression, along with terrifying trends in self-harm, eating disorders, bullying, and suicide. That's all from Colin Karchner. Dr. Jean Twenge, PhD, a San Diego State University psychology professor, says, kids spend less time sleeping and less time seeing their friends in person. With smartphones, social media, and the internet, what your kids are looking for is connection. What is the honest truth about how often your family connects? How many nights a week do you eat dinner together? What changes could you make on your family calendar for more connection? How can keeping secrets destroy your family? How can you create a family culture where everybody feels safe to share their secrets? I'm sorry to say, but it's possible your child may have hidden social media accounts, and they're hiding addictions and struggles from you. Many teenagers have extra phones and social media accounts behind their parents' back that they have no idea about. Because addiction is grown in solitude, but destroyed in community. We come together as humans because we find strength, peace, and comfort from one another. Do you want to be your child's number one community? Research shows that when teens are peer-oriented, they are at a greater risk for lower school performance and higher risk-taking behaviors, also drug and alcohol abuse. You see, teens should have plenty of friends, but the peer relationships should never be greater than the role of parents or replace the role of parents. If your kids are struggling with something, you can help them immensely by helping them find their community. Ask help from your pastor, therapist, doctor, or a role model who shares a similar story as your child. You see, addiction doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes we don't recognize the changes happening to our kids. Did you know most kids accidentally click on porn? Once the addiction forms, kids and teens use porn as a small fix to the problems going on in their lives. A college student who spoke at our church here in 2020 said that the reason that he formed his porn addiction was because he was being bullied at school for his lisp, and he was suicidal. He was turning to porn to numb that pain. You see, for kids, porn is escape from reality, problems, and their own bodies that they hate. Kids often put up masks. No one knows that they're struggling, and they don't know how to deal with the pain. Kids sometimes feel like a stranger in their own homes and in their own bodies. Social media at a young age causes kids to have self-hatred because they're comparing their lives and their bodies to their peers. You are currently living in a historical phenomenon. Never before have parents had to raise their kids in a 100% tech world. This is uncharted territory, and many parents have absolutely no idea what they're doing. Most 4-year-olds can fly through their parents' phone and FaceTime grandma all by themselves. As parents, we need to take responsibility in this uncharted territory. You see, no one gives their kid a smartphone thinking, I hope you find your cyberbully. I hope you develop an eating disorder. I hope you learn how to self-harm. I hope you get addicted to porn. I hope you're groomed by a pedophile. No. But giving your child a smartphone without any filtering, conversations, and safeguards is like giving your child the keys to the car with no driver's ed. Here are 2 ways to approach tech, and they are both wrong. Number 1, here's everything, good luck. Or number 2, here's nothing, and then you'll be baptized with fire. No. During my speech tonight, I'm going to give you some tools that will help you gradually give your kid and teen tech privileges slowly over time. So when your teen or child gets more responsibility and they fail, work through it together. Be available when your kids are honest about messing up. Teach your kids that they will need accountability forever. Self-control does not come easy to many. Some kids hide secrets more than others. So you need to figure out what works for your child's personality. But they will always be one step ahead of you with tech if you don't make an effort to keep up. And some of our most difficult times as parents are when we discover our child is participating in unwanted behavior. Be it vaping, drugs, alcohol, viewing pornography, or sending nudes, our first reaction can have a huge impact on the outcome. Shaming has the opposite effect on kids. What happens when we as parents refuse to acknowledge these issues? Our secrets keep us sick. Has your child attempted to talk to you about their struggles and you reacted with anger? If so, apologize and acknowledge it. Ask them if they would consider again coming to you with their struggles and promise to do better. Kids really like it when we say sorry, parents. They do. This will be listed on the handout that I provided, but these are my suggestions how you can protect your online space in your home. Like I said, first, start off by giving your child a safer phone, like the Gab phone, Gab watch, pinwheel phone, Trumi phone, or just an old school Nokia. Once they have gained maturity and wisdom and proved themselves to you, then you can give them a smartphone aged 15 or 16 and social media. Put the parental controls and filterings that I will tell you about, but continue to have constant conversations with your child about the dangers of the internet, and let them know that they can come to you with their questions and mistakes, and always check their phones. All right, so number 1, carefully determine what technology you will allow and keep in your home now. So the more devices that you have in your home, the more chances are your child could stumble across something bad. Do you really need 2 iPads? Do you really need 2 laptops? Try to reduce that as much as possible. Decide how you will handle guests bringing their devices into your home. You can monitor guest devices by some of the parental control apps. Obviously, you're not going to control your grandpa or your brother, if you're an adult coming into your house. But if you have kids or teens coming over for the day, bloop, 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 you can use your parental control apps and put them under it and block things or see what they're doing while they're at your house. Also, set up rules about your kids looking at other kids' phones. Again, if your child is 16, 17, this is a little different, but I'm talking about younger kids to young teens. My kids know the rule is you're not allowed to look at someone else's cell phone because someone else could show you porn just very quickly like that, and that happens very often. I talked to a teenager a few years ago about this, and she said, "Oh yeah, kids watch porn at lunch all the time and try to show me." I don't know if you realize this. My kids have so far been very good about honoring that, and when they have play dates locally where they can just walk home, they tell that friend, "Okay, you got your smartphone out, we have to go home now, and if you want us to stay, we have to play a game or do something that's not technology related." And then when kids come to our home, they know that phones are not allowed. We're here to hang out and connect unless they're responding to their own parents. You have the ability to decide what goes on in your own home, parents. Next, keep devices in public areas of your home. Please do not let your child have a laptop, smartphone, etc., or an iPad in their room. And if you do have a family laptop or computer, put a password on it so that if your kids want to use it, you have to go put the password in and you're there to monitor what happens. They can't get on it when you're not around. Also, my advice is saying no phones in bathrooms or bedrooms, period. Where do you think nude pictures are taken? Establish a curfew and a daily time limit for devices. Through the parental controls, with one click, you can turn off the internet to your child's phone. They can't sit there in bed and scroll the internet if you've turned it off. Regularly monitor and discuss device activity. I know it's awkward, parents, but you gotta look through your kid's phone, ask them what they've been doing, read their texts. It also helps them to feel like someone's gonna keep them accountable, and I think deep down inside, kids want that. Get a Wi-Fi router that helps filter the internet for you. So an example, it's in your handout, it's called the Griffin Safe Search Router. That will help you even more to filter a lot of these sites from coming just into your house at all. Get a protective app and a web filter to manage all of your family's devices. So examples in your paper are Circle Home or the K9 web search. And if you're confused about that, I explained it in your handout. Also, set expectations. Explain to your kids that tech privileges are a privilege, not a right. As the parent, you have the right to disable or take away the tech devices for any reason. Also, bad news. Beware that there are apps that are called VPN apps, and if a child downloads this VPN app, it tricks your internet filter to what they're doing. It pretty much nullifies everything I just said. So if you need to know if your kid has put a VPN on their phone, we can help you find that. That's something that kids teach each other. They teach each other how to get around parental controls. So lastly, discuss the goals in your family for using tech. Ask your kids, why do you want to use tech? Show them why you use tech yourself. Show them that tech is a tool to spread love, positivity, and kindness. Explain that tech is a tool to connect, but we also want to connect with as a family or with your friends in real life. Tell your kids that real life friends are more important than the internet. But how can you lead in this way for your kids and put your phone down too so that they can see you connecting as well? So instead of sending your kids off to bed every night with their devices, which you shouldn't be anyway, because I told you to not let them have it in their beds, spend time with them before bed playing games, watching a funny show, talking about their day, doing a work project or a craft. Read a devotional together. The college student that came to our church in 2020 to speak on internet safety said, at the time I think he was 17, and he said, I'm 17 years old, but I still want my mom to talk to me before bed. And he joked and said, my parents just want to watch Netflix together and say goodnight. And I say, I want to hang out with you guys too. And I thought that was really cute, that a 17-year-old boy still wants to spend time with his parents before bed. Last but not least, continue to have these important conversations with your children. Keep the line of communication open, because if they mess up, they will know they can come to you because you feel safe. Tell them that you are the parent, you pay the cell phone bill, and you will be checking their text messages and social media. So I gave you that statistic that the average teen is on their phone 9 hours a day. If you would like to bring that down for your child, it might be too hard to just turn it off overnight. So try to reach your goal slowly. Maybe just let them do it 7 hours a day 1 week. Then the next week, bring it down to 5. And the next week, bring it down to 2 or 1, or whatever your goal is. And that can help parents slowly decrease their child's screen time. That could also be video games as well. All right, talking about sex. When teaching your kids about sex, you want to be on the offense, not the defense. You want to be the first one to tell your children about these things. They will hear it from friends, I guarantee you. They will hear it on the bus or in the hallway. So stop and think. Do I want them to ask Siri or Google, or do I want them to ask me? When you talk about sex, make sure your child understands what sex actually is. Please don't be vague and use correct terminology. And also, please avoid using shame or fear to control their behavior. Fear and sexuality do not go together. Both parents should be involved in these conversations. Please, if you don't teach your children about sex, TikTok or Pornhub will. We use this book series for our kids. It's called God's Design for Sex series. The book description says, prepare your kids now for the pressures and relationships they'll experience as teens and adults. These award-winning illustrated books give you age-appropriate, biblically based information to help you openly talk with your children about sex and answer their questions. So this is book 1, ages 3 to 5. This is book 2, ages 5 to 8. And this is book 3, ages 8 to 11. And sometimes it's easier to sit down and read the book instead of look your kid directly in the eye and feel awkward. Then they can ask questions as they come across them in the book. Talking about pornography. A growing number of studies are showing the addictive effects of porn and the way that it harms people in relationships. There are over 40 studies that link compulsive porn use to depression, anxiety, and poor mental health functioning in general. I'm going to give a quote here from Smith Alley that says, when you buy love from pornography, you're buying love for your brain, but the cost is your heart. Did you know that pornography exposure at a young age can lead to early sexual behavior? Did you know that children typically view pornography accidentally at home by clicking a link or mistyping a Google search? Most parents would be shocked at how pornography is just 2 clicks away from some of the most popular sites and apps that your child may be visiting. Nurses who deal with sexual assault victims in hospitals are finding more and more that pornography is playing a role in these cases. Kids are watching porn and then acting it out on their peers. Peer-on-peer sexual abuse is on the rise. Porn changes your brain. Watching porn releases mood-altering chemicals that rewire your mind until you crave it more than real-life connections. Porn is the ultimate villain. It destroys your connection with others, hinders your confidence, supports human trafficking, like Jessica will tell us, is addiction-forming, and creates immense guilt. Porn is an escape, but it doesn't lead to freedom. Your child deserves better. What society says is normal, you can say no. You can choose to go against the current and stand up for what is right and to fight for your children. Start telling your kids what pornography is now, even if they don't have a phone or even internet access. Like I said, someone can easily show them porn on their phone. A book that you can use to teach your kids about porn is called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, Porn-Proofing Today's Young Kids by Kristen A. Jensen and Debbie Fox. This is for older kids, and this is for younger kids. I will have all of this afterwards if you would like to look through it. It's basically about parents that are talking to their kids about pornography, what to do if you accidentally come across it, and how to avoid an addiction. On the resources on the page I printed out for you, I have many options for you if you or someone you know is struggling with porn. There is hope. I put a lot of effort and energy into putting that resource together for you, and I can promise that every resource on there has been vetted by me and researched by me. Talking about nudes. Amongst 9 to 12-year-olds in 2020, 1 in 5 said it's normal to share nudes, and 1 in 7 said they had shared their own nudes. That's 9 to 12-year-olds. Your kids are going to get incessant and many requests for nude photos. It's not something you can avoid once your child starts playing video games or has a social media account. So you can't stop them from being asked for nudes. But what you can do is prepare your child for when that happens. You can tell them how to be safe and to make wise choices online. Have you heard of sextortion? Sextortion is when strangers or friends groom kids and teens on apps like Instagram, Snapchat, or TikTok, asking for explicit photos, then demanding more. When the child refuses, the perpetrator threatens to post the previous images already provided. There are many news stories online of teens and kids who have committed suicide after sextortion for fear that the perpetrator was going to post the pictures that they sent them of their nude bodies. If only those children had a relationship with their parent to come and say, "Mom, help me." But instead, they killed themselves. Revenge porn is also a huge issue. See, when your child or teen sends a nude photo to their boyfriend or girlfriend, that photo can be shared amongst hundreds and thousands of other people to bully the victim. So you need to talk to your kids about the dangers of taking nude pictures of themselves and how those pictures can be shared with strangers. Explain to them that someone can lie online about being a child or their friend or their boyfriend or girlfriend. Remind them to never agree to meet anyone they met online or to give away their home address or their school or their full name because kidnapping happens this way. These conversations seem awkward and difficult, but you must muster up the courage and wisdom to talk to your children about these dangers, even if they don't have a phone yet. In conclusion, I want to repeat what I said earlier. I believe that each one of you, as a parent or grandparent, is uniquely anointed by God to raise your child in this digital age. Instead of being afraid, I want to give you the tools to help you feel prepared. You see, the same power that raised Christ from the dead, the same power that created the whole world, it lives inside of you if you have accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. The Holy Spirit inside of you will guide you and give you wisdom on how to protect your child from the enemy's schemes. That Holy Spirit inside of you will guide you how to help you with your child's relationship with God and become the man or woman that God has called them to be. It's not too late, parents. It's not. Even if you feel like your child is too far gone, it's never too late. Psalms 34:18-19 says, "The Lord is near to those who are brokenhearted. He saves those who have lost all hope. Good people suffer many troubles, but the Lord saves them from them all." And Romans 12:1-2. "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." I'd like to pray all of you right now, if that's okay. I'm going to extend my hand out to you and pray this prayer over all of you right now. Dear Jesus, I pray for all of these parents and grandparents in this room. I pray that you would comfort their hearts right now if they are struggling with their child in any way. I pray that your peace, wisdom, and clarity would wash over every parent in this room. I pray that you would give them a passion and a zeal for their child's online safety. I pray that you would give them a renewed vision for their family goals and connection together. I pray that you would help them break the bondage of addiction in this room. Porn addictions, screen addictions, video game addictions, self-harm, suicide, anxiety, depression, eating disorders, be gone in Jesus' name. The enemy, Satan, has no authority in this place. We claim each child in this room and in this church in Jesus' name that they would love and follow Christ for all the days of their life. We pray that the shackles and bondage of addiction would be broken in Jesus' name. Amen.
Well, it's so great to be here tonight. I thought about starting with talking about some of the stories of Casey's childhood and all of those types of things, but Casey has way more dirt on me than I have on her, and her parents are here who put up with me in their house as a teenager. So I decided that I would spare Casey because of my own sparing of the dirt that they all have on me. But like Casey said, we met when we were in elementary school, and I think one of the things I love about even tonight is this is not something that was talked about when we were growing up. It kind of happened where the internet came in, pornography started to go on a rampage, and we really didn't know anything about it, and now we're starting to have conversations about it in church. That is, I think, a miracle in itself, and I love that the church is getting involved with all of these things. Talking about trafficking and all the different sexual exploitations is not an easy topic to even listen to. So I commend all of you for even coming tonight, because listening to stories and things that happen are taking away some of your innocence. And by taking away your innocence, you're actually helping protect those that need protection of their innocence. And so you really are heroes just by coming and learning about trafficking and exploitation. So just a little bit about me, my background. I've worked in nonprofit for 20 years. I've loved it. And a lot of times people will say, well, how do you not burn out? How do you not have this take over you and overcome? And I can say this here because one of my favorite places to speak in the world is at churches, because we all know that when you have God, you really do have a place of healing. You have a place of refuge. And that really is what gives me hope and joy. And I can say, even though I work with some of the worst cases, both in the United States and around the world, I still feel like I'm full of joy, and that's by the grace of God. So, like I said, I work all over the world. We work in about 40 different countries. I work for a nonprofit that our headquarters are here in Utah. It's called Operation Underground Railroad. But within all 40 countries that we work in, I hear a consistent thing around the world. And it's that trafficking doesn't happen in my area. I can be in Thailand in the red light district, and they're still like, oh, trafficking doesn't happen here. And so what that teaches me is that even though they think that trafficking doesn't happen there, or some of the other well-known red light districts in the world, we also have that same mentality. There's no way it could be happening in Utah, not in my neighborhood. Many of you might have seen recently, there was a 13-year-old boy in Layton, and I have a lot of compassion for him, because that must be so difficult that his face was shown and that kids at school know what happened to him. The only reason why I bring his story up is that he was originally contacted through Roadblocks, which is a game that Casey mentioned, and is a game that I had no idea was so popular until kids recently had started telling me about Roadblocks, that this is a fun, great game. And the reason why this person was able to contact this 13-year-old in Layton is because there's a message chat on it. And so I think sometimes it's like, oh, video games, well, what's the big deal? I grew up playing Super Mario Brothers, which I'm pretty good at still, just saying. But that didn't have a message chat on the end, attached to it, where now all these different games have message and chat forms on it. And so there was another situation where a 7-year-old was contacted on Tonka Trucks, a little innocent kids game, where he was contacted by somebody that pretended to be somebody his own age, and they just wanted to hang out. And so they know what questions to ask in order to get their address. It doesn't happen right away. It's not, hey, you're 7, I'm 39, and I would like your home address. There's a thing called grooming, where they'll do these different tactics to get this information from children. It might be something like, oh, I love going to such and such park. Have you ever been there? Oh, I've been to the Sugar House Park. Yeah, I know where that is. And then they start to gather information like that, where it's step by step by step, and traffickers know what they're doing. I love that Casey shared so many statistics, because the reality of that is backed up by story after story after story that I've heard and worked with. There was 3 teenage girls that were being sold by their mom in Utah, in the Salt Lake area. They were being sold on Craigslist, so you're advertising them on Craigslist, and these 3 girls were advertised as $50 for the package. Well, the 16-year-old I got referred to because she was suicidal, and they thought it was the teenager's problem. In reality, what was actually happening is she was saying, I can't continue to get raped night after night after night as my mom sells me and my 2 sisters. Something like that couldn't happen in our community. Not in Utah. Let me tell you another story. And I think it's to help us understand that you might not be the one trafficking your children. Hopefully that makes you ill just to think of that. If somebody was trafficking your child, your grandchild, a friend of yours, you would probably want to kill the person that was doing that to hurt your kid. And that's why you have to know this information, because you are the ones who are actually the heroes. You are the ones that help rescue so many kids because you are the person who is in your neighborhood. Most likely, I will never be in your neighborhood. Your sphere of influence is not mine, but that's why you're the protector of them. Because unfortunately, so many parents do traffic their children. It's about over 50% of parents that traffic their children. It's hard to believe that that could happen. I worked with an amazing survivor here in Utah. She was 13 when her mom started selling her. The exchange was money for rent. She was forced to have pictures taken of her. Those pictures were used for child explicit material, otherwise known as child pornography, sold online. She was just a kid. But her mom was like, I can make money off of her. Why would I not use that form of income? So you have parents, even in Utah, that are looking at their kids as a form of income. A lot of these traffickers were abused themselves. It doesn't give excuse, but it helps bring in some reality of when we're breaking these generational cycles, we're actually breaking the chains. That 13-year-old now is around 20 years old, and she's doing great. She's been through different therapy programs that we've got to help her with, schooling. But the thing that she came to me the other day with that I was so in shock, because she has had battles. If you can imagine being raped time and time again at the hands and the mercy of your parents allowing that, she's had a lot of struggles that she's gone through. She walked into my office the other day, and she was excited. And she's already an animated person, so you're like, I don't know what's about to happen, but I'm in. Like, she gets so excited. But she walked in, and she said, Jessica, I found Jesus. And I was like, and I knew that she had been atheist, so I was like, I don't know what you're talking about or what's gotten into you. But she was like, did you know Jesus can set you free? And I was so in shock and so happy for her because she had found somebody that said there is a way, there is hope, and that there is a Savior that really can help heal. I've seen people talk in so many different circles about what actually helps somebody heal after they've been trafficked. And from my experience, there's a couple things that really stand out. Somebody talks about an encounter with God, or somebody talks about how they've had people come into their lives and show them what real love is. And when I tell people that one of the best mechanisms for healing is actual, real love, they almost look at me like, oh, come on. There's no way that love can actually be the answer. But when you think about somebody that hasn't ever experienced love without strings attached, love comes with a price tag over your head, and then you show them what real love is, it's life-changing. I'll give you an example. I was a foster parent, and I absolutely loved it. I was a foster parent for 2 years, and I had about 25 children live with me throughout those 2 years. So there was this one time that this 9-year-old girl was living with me, and she had been through so much abuse. She had been adopted and what they call failed adoption twice. So she had gone through abuse at the hands of her parents, then adopted. That family that adopted her said, we don't want you anymore. The second family that adopted her, the wife accused the 9-year-old of seducing the husband, and she was unadopted again. So when she came to live with me, she had no idea what love was. So being the amazing cook that I am, I made macaroni and cheese. Yes, from the box, and yes, it was Kraft, and I could still mess that up if I tried. But I remember we sat down at the table, and she starts crying. And I'm like, goodness gracious, did I mess up the mac and cheese again? And I was like, sweetie, what's wrong? What's going on? And she was like, I've never had somebody sit down at a table with me and share a meal. And it took me a minute to process that, because I'm assuming everyone in here, and I might be wrong, but has sat down at a table and had somebody share a meal with them. That type of love is something she never experienced. It's something that we can all be grateful for when we're having lunch or dinner with people that care about us, friends, family, coworkers, tomorrow. May that story come back to your head, not out of guilt, but out of gratitude that you know what some form of love is, and that you have the ability to give that to somebody else, to a child that may have never experienced that before. We all have these life-changing moments in our lives. It might be coming tonight, learning more about trafficking, learning more about sexual exploitation, the dangers of cell phones. It might be tonight that it's a life-transforming time in your life. Mine was the first girl that lived with me when I was a foster parent. She was 6 months old when she started to be trafficked, and it was by her parents. She was trafficked for the first 4 years of her life, a baby. To me, I didn't even think that was possible. I remember the night that she came to stay with me, and I got her case file, and I was reading through it. Her parents advertised her on Craigslist. People would come to her house. They had a studio set up in their basement. Their baby sat on the table while people would rape their baby, molest their baby, do anything that they could sexually to this child. And then they would film it, and they would sell this for child pornography, for child explicit material. I remember reading the case file about how the mom ended up going to jail, the dad went to jail and the mom testified. And when I was reading the case file, it was almost like there was this sense of pride in it from the parents, where they said, yeah, we figured out how to make money off of our child 2 ways. Not just by selling our child, but by filming it and then selling that video. It's heartbreaking that that could even happen. And I share those stories because that's the United States. That's not Thailand. That's not Cambodia. That's not South America. That's the United States. Those types of things are happening in our world today. And when I think about all the different processes and healing that has to go through to help that child even get back to some form of being able to interact with the world, it's very difficult. When her and I would go to the mall, and she was 6 years old when she lived with me, I had to hold her hand as we walked through the mall because she was groomed with different behaviors that you don't get food until you touch somebody in a sexual way. So when she would see men at the mall, she thought, well, if I want the ice cream, I've got to go up to a random man and touch him. She had to relearn those things. And while those might not be your children, that might be your neighbor. That could be kids at school. That could be different kids that you meet at Target. All the different things that you interact with and those kids that you meet, well, it might not be our own child. It could be somebody that we meet at some point. Oftentimes when I hear somebody say, well, I've never met somebody that's been trafficked, it's more like you've never known that they were being trafficked. Because trafficking doesn't look like what a lot of people think. They think it looks like the movie Taken, where it's a child's kidnapped off the street, thrown into a van, and they're trafficked throughout Europe. And really, trafficking can look like so many different things. Like Casey had mentioned, the exploitation that can happen through phones, I wish that she was wrong. I wish that the statistic she shared was wrong. There was a friend of mine who lives in Salt Lake, and he had 3 roommates. This just happened last year. I heard that one of his roommates had just gotten in trouble, and I was like, oh, you know what? Okay, whatever, people get in trouble. What had happened was this guy in his 30s, church attending, good looking guy, had gone to his neighbors. There were several teenage girls in his neighborhood. And he had started saying, oh, I'll buy you clothes. Oh, here's a new cell phone. Oh, you need some money to go get that? And so through this different process, he got them to send them pictures. Innocent teenage girls. Had never been in trouble before, lived in an upper to middle class neighborhood in Salt Lake City. And this guy preyed on the girls in the neighborhood. And then once you send one picture, well, I'm going to show that to your friends. I'm going to put it on social media. The fear that comes over somebody when they can blackmail and manipulate those videos or pictures being shown to friends, families, is so overwhelming that the girls continue to send more pictures and more videos. So he would give them more stuff, such as money, cell phone, different things like that, but he's then selling these pictures and these videos. That's trafficking. There's an exchange of money, there's an exchange of a resource, and there's exploiting these kids so that they feel like there's no way out. And these kids were just doing it online, on Instagram or through text messaging, through Snapchat, all these different forms, which seem so innocent, and yet traffickers love them. Somebody that wants to exploit somebody is, to them, I heard one guy say, social media is like candy. I just take it and eat it, and then I can make money off of it. And I was processing what that even meant. And in his mind, he's saying it's so easy, it's so good, and there is an endless amount of it. And these are the kids that then now have to go on and they have to live with this. They have to heal through it. There was another incident here where the parents found out that the child, who she was 15 at the time, she had this bank account with $80,000 in it. And the parents, finding out that their teenager has $80,000, were alarmed, as you can imagine. Well, how this bank account had been created was the trafficker was getting videos and images of this teenage girl and paying her for them, and helped her create a separate bank account. So the teenager is trying to figure out what to even do. Luckily, law enforcement was able to find out all the information and rescue that child. But there's so many different incidents where law enforcement's not able to catch everything. And that's why I say again, you really are the eyes and ears of watching out for kids in your neighborhood. there's one thing that I really want everybody to remember, because it's something that can happen to anyone, and it doesn't matter how old or young you are. The oldest survivor I've worked with is 84. The youngest is 6 months. And I say that because that's the truth. This can happen to anyone. And oftentimes what traffickers love to do, it's called the boyfriend pimp, where they'll seduce you, meaning they'll make you think that they're in love with you. Okay, well, this is my boyfriend, of course I'm safe. Or this is my child's boyfriend, of course they're safe. And what they're actually doing is they say, if I can win their heart, I own their body. And it's a tactic that is used throughout all ages. And so if you start to notice changes in behaviors of your kids or friends or family, where suddenly they have all these new clothes, or they have the new cell phone, or they have all these different resources that they didn't have before, that doesn't necessarily mean they're being trafficked, but it's a sign to look for it. I had somebody once call me because they noticed an Uber driver was coming to their neighbor's house a lot, and they had heard that sometimes traffickers use Uber drivers to pick up victims. And so they called me and they're like, there's this Uber driver in my neighborhood. You guys need to come and investigate them. And so sometimes we take it to the extreme, where what was really happening was their car broke down, and so they were using Uber. God bless them, because I can only imagine how expensive it was for the month that the Uber driver was coming. But it was just an Uber driver. So it's a learning to ask different questions, the whys, the things like that. And I'll tell you again at the end, but there's resources that you can find on our website where you can get educated, find out the different questions to ask, so that not every Uber driver or every person at Target, you're like, they're trying to kidnap my kids, they're a trafficker, we need to get them. Because I've been there, and I can say that there's still this balance in learning how to identify what is going on. And a lot of times it's through building relationships with different people. We're going to play a video now that is a story of a survivor that is here in the United States, and just to give it the visual and a little bit more reality.
Some people will acknowledge that human trafficking is going on here, but they just assume that it's only in impoverished neighborhoods. But I think my story is a prime example of how that's not true, because I grew up in the typical middle-class home. I was raised in church, and it happened to me. I was trafficked actually just a couple doors down from my grandmother's. I was at her house fairly often, and it was just kind of like wrong place, wrong time kind of thing. And this younger boy had gotten involved in an organized crime group that was trafficking children all over the Chicagoland area. And basically the way it worked was these young boys recreated R. Kelly's sex tape that was going around the suburbs of Chicago at that time. And they used that to advertise me in the community. And whenever I happened to be over at my grandmother's, so this mostly happened in the summers when I was spending a lot of time there, they would somehow communicate to buyers that I was available. I would assume that I was going to the highest bidder, and then I would be told to come over to the house, and I was gone for only 30 to 45 minutes max, probably not even that long. And men from all over my community were coming to rape me. And you would never think, seeing them on the street, that they would be capable of something like that. Most of them came in, they took off a suit jacket, they had a ring on, they seemed like totally normal, average people. No one had that weird, living in my mom's basement vibe or anything like that. So I think a lot of people have a lot of stereotypes around this, and it's because of those stereotypes that it can exist well in America.
I was sexually assaulted by police officers, by paramedics, by teachers, by the same people who promised to keep me safe. A lot of the time we're taught that trafficking is you being thrown into a van and somebody kidnaps you and then you're never seen again, when it's actually a lot more subtle than that. The
boyfriend pimp or the Romeo pimp, where they use manipulation and love and those types of emotional ties to lure the victims into the life.
He took an interest in me and showed me a lot of affection, and that was something that at that time in my life was missing. And so to me, in my little 10-year-old brain, I thought he was my boyfriend.
We were spending a lot of time together. He was picking me up from school, picking me up from my house, and we just had bonded over a couple of months.
The boy was 16 when I met him. He was an older kid, so I just thought automatically he had a cool factor,
He brought up the idea of selling myself for money. And his reason for this was, he was late on rent, he didn't have enough funds, he was behind on payments, and he was supplying me with the love and attention that I wasn't receiving.
I was sold for 2 or 3 years, and it ended because I hit puberty. And the men that were purchasing me were pedophiles. And so once I developed breasts, they weren't interested. And there was actually a whole summer of me being rejected by them, one after another. And so the business dried up, and they just upped and moved on to another kid.
He beat me unconscious. I managed to pick myself up off the floor, and I walked into the bathroom and I looked at myself, and I just couldn't remember the girl who was looking back at me. The girl who loved school, the girl who loved her family and loved sports. I didn't recognize her either. And he came back shortly after and he told me to get in the car. And I did what I was told.
The worst thing you can do is hide from this issue, because it's coming at your kids whether you like it or not. Traffickers are constantly fishing online. They're sending DMs, they're watching kids for their vulnerable moment when they send that tweet or they send that update saying, I had an awful day, I hate my life, I hate my parents. That's the moment that they get into their life, and it seems innocent.
It's hard to believe some of the stories. She was 10 years old, and then once she hit puberty, they no longer wanted her. There's an area in the world that we work with where the average age that a girl's first raped is 9 years old. And we think about even the United States, where traffickers are targeting girls between 12 and 14 years old, and boys. And I think sometimes we even forget that boys are being trafficked as well. And sometimes the reasons why is it's more shameful for them. They feel like, I can't come forward and talk about it. My friends will make fun of me. There was somebody that we worked with not too long ago who was sexually abused, and it was filmed, and then the film was sold, and it was by his baseball coach. We worked with some different traffickers that said, we specifically target churches. We'll go to churches because we know that kids are running around and sometimes they're not supervised, and then we can work on grooming them. So it's the places that sometimes we let our guards down. It's with their coaches, they're in their church communities, when they're at school. This is a lot of the places where it happens. And so should we fear all of those places, not let our kids go near any sporting events or churches and just keep them away and hide them in the back room of our homes? No. But we should become educated so that we know what to look for. The video that you just saw is a documentary that we made not too long ago, and you can go on our website and watch the full documentary. And I don't mention that because I want you to watch our documentaries. I personally, doesn't matter to me whether you do or not, but for your own benefit, to be able to see these stories and understand more of how it's happening. They're on Amazon Prime. That one is also on Apple TV. We have another one that's called Operation Toussaint that you can watch for free on Amazon Prime that is about some of our international cases. That one specifically is in Haiti. And so I bring those up only because sometimes you hear these talks and you're like, well, great. Kids are being trafficked and raped and sold and there's videos and all these things happening. Well, now what do I do? And that's the worst feeling in the world, to walk out and feel like there's nothing you can do. So watching the documentaries, I encourage you to do. You can go on our website. We have a training that you can do for free, and you learn more about the specific signs of trafficking. There's other ways that if you want to get more involved, we started Operation Underground Railroad, so the company I work for, we started a program called the Host Home Program. And basically, it's similar to foster care in the sense of you have a survivor that comes and lives with you. It's a survivor that's 18 and over, and so usually it's a survivor that has gone through an aftercare home, or what more people know as a residential treatment home, and then they turn 18 and they're like, well, now what? I don't know what a normal family looks like. I don't necessarily know what love is. And so it's a survivor here in Utah that says, I want to know what it looks like to be in a family. And so they come, they live with you for 12 months, they start to go to school, get a job, really create a life, and people can be involved. Not everybody can do that. That's not a calling for everybody at this time in their lives, but it's nice to know, whether it's you or a friend or somebody else, that there is a program for survivors where you can get involved. We do vetting, background checks, 40 hours of training to help prepare somebody for that, and then we provide ongoing casework for that program. And there's also a mentoring program that we started. You might have known of other ones like Big Brothers Big Sisters or different programs like that, so you can become a mentor. And that sounds overwhelming because I've done it, and I was scared the first time that I was mentoring somebody, like officially, like I'm your mentor. I'm like, oh my goodness, what do we do? And it's simple things like you can take them out for ice cream, and you can take them to a college campus. The statistic that I've heard before is that for a child that's in foster care that has never been on a college campus, is you take them on a college campus once, and it increases their likelihood of going to college by 50%. Statistics come and go, but there's truth in it. So whether that statistic is exactly right or not, there's truth to. If you've never been on a college campus and you grew up in survival mode, just going to a college campus, seeing that there's a cafeteria, here's the admissions office, here's where people play sports, whatever it is, changes their mindset. And college isn't the answer for everyone, but it is good that they know, and it's helpful that they know that that's an option for them. It might be taking them to your place of work and showing them, hey, this is where I work, this is what we do. And they're like, I didn't even know that was an option for a profession. I was only told that I can be sold for sex. I didn't know that there were other options. I've heard survivors say that, where they say, well, outside of my body, what can I do to make money? And so it's the simple things in life that really helps change somebody's mindset. And I think you being here tonight is really the hope. Like I've said, you are the answer. You are somebody's person that they're going to be able to trust and open up to. So I just encourage you to continue to be that person, continue to get educated, find out more ways to get involved, and there's always something. There's always something that we can do. So I thank you for being here tonight. Again, I acknowledge this is not an easy topic. I don't share easy stories. I don't always get invited back to dinner parties. When people ask me what I do, I try to keep it so basic, but if they ask like one additional question, I'm like, oh, I'm never getting invited back. Like, that's okay, that's okay. I like to just say I work for a nonprofit and leave it there. but that's not always the case. So I thank you for your courage of coming tonight. I thank you for your willingness to sit through a really difficult topic, and I really believe that we are the change and that the church can be a safe place of healing for so many different people. So thank you all. And we're going to Thank you. And we're going to play one last video. It's just a song, and I just encourage you guys to take this time to pray and think. It's only 4 minutes, 5 minutes long, where this is your time just to think and pray about what you can do. Maybe God will bring different things to your mind, different children, ways that you can have an impact. But we'll just have this video playing, and then I think Casey will dismiss us at the end.